Hey, what's up, everybody? It's gonna be a whoopin' soccer. Thanks so much for joining in on tonight's episode of the Enough to Keep Going podcast, Grown Ups Who Game. I am your host for tonight, Agasically Stamus, aka Game Logic on Twitch. Here with me, as always, are my stalwart cohorts in crime. The prime one, the bearded, I don't know what to call you, man.
That's fine. At first, I thought you said the Star Wars cohort. So.
Oh, Star Wars Prime, how are you doing today?
I'm well, thank you very much. And you might hear some trains tonight because I don't know, they're
I was gonna ask
very loud tonight.
I was going to ask you about the trains. Thanks so much for taking care of that for me.
Yeah.
And to his right, Mr. DBQ Hams.
It's going to be a what? A Wubensagen? What?
A Whoopensake. You're from that part of the country. You know that term, don't you?
Nope. I'll pretend like I do if it makes it feel better. Oh, here, let me say it with my missing tooth. A Wubensagen? Oh, wow. That would be great.
It is a Wisconsin term, from my understanding.
Not sure. I believe you.
He's not native, though. He's not a native of Wisconsin.
Gotcha. So tonight is our deep dive format show.
Wait a minute. You can't keep going and not say what that means.
What? It's just an expression of excitement.
Oh, okay.
It's like a hootenanny or a humdinger.
Okay, I understand that.
Oh, now Prime knows. Oh, you said hootenanny. Oh, okay.
I don't know Whoopenstalker, but I know hootenanny.
So tonight is going to be our deep dive format show. We had our GX Gamer Experience episode last week. Tonight we will be kind of thematically talking about some key trends in the games industry news over the last week. It's kind of a legal eagle episode, and then we'll have a little bit of kind of the business and marketing flavor. So up front, we'll be diving into some legal issues. Key and foremost among them is this topic of drifting Joy-Cons. I've got an opinion on this, but I'm going to let it go. Prime, why don't you tell us about this while I put out the social media?
All right. So our friends at law offices of, I don't know how to say this first name, but Chemicals, Schwartz Kreiner and Donald Smith have filed a class action lawsuit against Nintendo for their Joy-Cons, claiming, basically because of the drifting issue that's been coming up lately. Basically, what happens is if you just have your Joy-Con sitting there, you're not moving the sticks at all of a sudden it'll just move by itself up, down, whichever which way it's going. And coincidentally enough, when I read this article, I started having like a major issues with one of my Joy-Cons. I believe it's the left one, where I'll just leave the stick alone and it just starts kind of, if I'm in a game or if I'm on menus, it'll just start going to the left, turning to the left, I guess, with the left Joy-Con, not actually moving. So, and I guess that's been, if you read forums and comments from people that they've been complaining about this actually for quite a while. I've actually seen these complaints. I just recently myself had seen this. So
didn't Swiss have some drift?
I think he did. I think he had mentioned it too, that he was getting a drift on one of his. I don't know if he said he sent that in or not. I think he was going to, maybe. I don't know if he actually ever did. But so this has officially been filed and it's probably going to court, or at least something's going to happen. So we'll see what's gonna go on with this. But I mean, I guess initially I was, because I obviously wasn't having the problem. I was like, this is just a stupid class action lawsuit. Like everybody always suing somebody for something. But it's like I said, I've seen a lot of complaints about it on Reddit, on Facebook groups, and just wherever comments and stuff. So
yeah, but correct me if I'm wrong, Legal Eagle. But in order for it to be a case, they've got to show something more than it's a problem that happens, right? Like there's got to be some knowledge of that this was a problem that went out, right? Like in a class action lawsuit on a car, there's safety tests that are within or outside of the parameters of acceptability and things still go out, or there's knowledge that your muffler explodes, or right, like what makes this actionable other than the fact that it exists, right? Yes, there's enough evidence and Twitter posts and pictures, videos out there of people experiencing it, but where's the harm in that causes a class action lawsuit? Unless Nintendo has an internal memo that says ship it,
Right. I mean, it's kind of like the Red Ring. Like, obviously, that was a big deal back in the day with the Xbox 360, and eventually it came out that they knew there was something going on there, but they still let the system go out. And that was the weird thing, I guess, when I was reading the excuse me, the note from the law office's website. I was looking to see, oh hey, I guess they have evidence that there's something going on that they knew, but it doesn't really say that. It just kind of explains like what the actual problem is, but not like how, if there's any evidence, if there's any some guy admitting from Nintendo, like drunk in a bar or something that that they knew about this. There's nothing. They just kind of explains what's going on. So yeah, like you said, I don't know if they really have anything or not, but I guess we'll see. We'll see what happens.
But here, late breaking news: Nintendo has an internal memo that says they're going to fix Joy-Con drift for free, even outside the warranty period and outside of being able to provide some proof of purchase. So Patrick Klepek, who has been at 1UP and Kotaku and Giant Bomb, is now over at Vice Gaming, has done broken a number of stories over the years, and he has seen and has documentation of an internal Nintendo memo that says, quote, customers will no longer be requested to provide proof of purchase for Joy-Con repairs. It's a customer service memo. Additionally, it is not necessary to confirm warranty status if the customer requests a refund for a previously paid Joy-Con repair, confirm the prior repair, and then issue a refund. So it sounds like Nintendo knows that they've got a PR problem, whether or not it's a legal problem yet, but this seems like a way that they're trying to get out in front of potentially making it a legal problem.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, maybe, I mean, obviously that's an internal document that was never actually supposed to see the light of day. But I don't know if that can be used in some way. I mean, I doubt it, because it's not like an official, I don't know if they can like try to get that publicized or something like that, and maybe they can use that against them, say, hey,
internal document just came out now to say that, yes, we are acknowledging that people are experiencing this. It's not saying that saying that people aren't experiencing it is flying in the face of the YouTube videos and the Twitter posts and everything else of people who have documented it. If this internal memo was dated a year ago, yeah, maybe, right? But if it's dated today after the class action lawsuit's been filed, I don't know that plays into discovery in terms of deciding if there's enough evidence to bring this case forward.
Yeah, and then like I'm not aware, obviously.
Nor do you play it on TV.
No, yeah. Nor do I play one. But
so,
I was just throwing it out there to see.
No, right. This is good. It's a nice, and we cede the floor to Mr. Yes, please.
Well,
he has something to say.
I guess I wanted to step back a little bit and talk about this from just the gamer's perspective, and certainly we cover the business side and economics and yada yada yada. I guess part of my question here is the gamer impact, which is there an impact, and is there, I talk, in certain situations I've been in, and I talk to my kids, about like, I know that you think it's unfair that you're not allowed to participate in X, but you don't really want to be a place that you're not really wanted. In similar vein, do I really want Nintendo to fix the Joy-Cons, right? Like, do I really just want them to, because I think what this whole thing is bringing me around to, actually probably what it brought me around to a really long time ago, is I don't think that the Joy-Cons are a good design. I think a lot of us sipped a lot of Kool-Aid thinking that they were very cool, and now in retrospect, I look back at this, and I feel like this is very much the Wii controller all over again. There was a very brief romance and a very brief, it's the new hot thing, and it's innovative, and it's not the same as the Boomerang controller or the Batwing, but it was neat. But like over time, I say over time, but pretty quickly, I was like, these are not good. Like the height of the analog sticks makes it like a very stubby stick. Like I frequently have to replace like my thumbs on the right thing. So class action lawsuit to make them fix something that was kind of bad in the first place. And I saw, and I've told you guys, right, my way of dealing with this is I just don't play with the Joy-Cons. I only play with the Pro Controller. Even if I play with it undocked, I play with the Pro Controller. And I saw somebody mention, well, but I'm not going to pay Nintendo. I'm not going to reward them by buying a Pro Controller, to make up for the fact that the Joy-Cons don't work. And I'm like, who owns a Switch who still doesn't have a Pro Controller? Like you're just not living your best life. So I don't know. I get it. It's a lot of wailing and gnashing of teeth, but I'm just like, they're a fashion accessory on the Switch for me at this point. They're like a grip for me to hold the thing, and that's about it.
Well, Nintendo has a new console that they'd be happy to sell you that has no detachable Joy-Cons at all, in case you're worried about that.
Right. And if I bought that as a secondary unit, I would buy it and I would use the Pro Controller with it. So it's just interesting, there's going to be, and who knows how the class action lawsuit goes too, right? I get these things all the time. It's like, congratulations, you were rewarded as part of a class action lawsuit. Please email, send us a snail mail letter with 2 postage stamps on it so we can hand you your $8.76. And I'm like, no, thank you. It's too much trouble. So, I don't know. I guess maybe I'm also saying this is a little bit, schlepping towards Bethlehem. I just don't know that it really comes out well. Even if people are proven right, I don't know that that's helpful. Because I'm certainly not going to put my faith and trust in new Joy-Cons, right, and hope that, it's corrected the problem. The other thing that's funny is, how many times, like, through all our lives have you guys been in a situation where you're like, did the controller just do something that I didn't really tell it to do? So I'm also curious, how long this was going on before anybody ever actually realized it or said anything. And then I find it really funny that Prime says, oh yeah, then as soon as they announced it, something went wrong with mine. And I'm like, did it? Or do we all think that something's wrong with our Joy-Cons now that we're aware that there's a class action lawsuit? It's a bit funny.
No, it actually is, because I can just sit there and I do nothing, and then it's like just moving by itself. But obviously they do all kind of, hopefully they do all kind of quality tests on the, on the controllers and stuff, where they have like a little machine just going like this all the time, it's like, 1,000 times just like pushing it to the sides and, to test it. I'm assuming, I don't know, as for someone like, for me at least personally, I play majority of the time on, undocked and handheld. So obviously I have to use the Joy-Cons because I don't want to, I don't really have like a little table or anything that I could like sit the Switch on and just play with the Pro Controller if I'm just sitting on the couch or something.
So you play undocked in your face.
Yes.
Because I think that's another thing that we often don't talk about is undocked does not necessarily, also doesn't necessarily mean Joy-Cons on. Because even when I have played undocked and I did use the Joy-Cons, I used the Joy-Cons on the, I don't even remember what the thing is called anymore.
Oh, the grip?
Yes. Yeah. So I had the grip and the charge grip. And the very first adjustment I made was I just stopped ever using the Joy-Cons just standalone, removed from the thing. I experimented with it when I first got the Switch, and I was like, this is not good. And then I bought the grip charge grip or whatever, and I would play with it like that. But then I knew that the Pro Controller was the best control solution of them all. And I only didn't use it out of my whole like OCD fear of like wear and tear. And like, I'm going to make this Pro Controller last as long as I possibly can, and therefore force myself to use the Joy-Cons either in the charge grip or by themselves just to not put additional wear and tear on the Pro Controller. But then finally I was like, no. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying, it is a different feel when you have the Joy-Cons, on the system, obviously, because it's not, there's no backing to them basically, so you can't really grip them really well. And I actually did buy like a separate grip, like I can slap onto my my Switch now, which has a little little kind of piece that kind of sticks out, so you can kind of grip it a little bit better.
Right.
But and maybe this didn't really start for me, at least, because when I'm playing, like, say, something like Fortnite, which I just started playing more regularly within the past year. If you're playing something else like Mario and stuff like that, I don't think you're going to be hitting the sticks all that hard, not really. But I mean, something like Fortnite, you're always like twisting around and doing all these, these tricks and stuff within the game. So you're putting a lot of more stress on those sticks than some of the other games. So that's a possible reason too. But I mean,
do you play Smash with the Joy-Cons?
I do, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to play Smash.
Well, my question for you, Prime, is how do you know that those phantom inputs aren't the results of Chinese surveillance? So this story...
That's a segue, ladies and gentlemen.
I know.
This story sourced from the Los Angeles Times by James Kuchin, reports on how Riot Games, which is owned by Tencent, so we talked about this a little while ago during E3, and how we often talk about, and we are guilty of it, often talk about like the big 5 publishers, and then when you actually look at it by revenue, we typically tend not to mention Tencent in there. Tencent is actually, I think, the largest game publishing company. Technically, they do seem to have a very hands-off approach to the development studios that they own, and they're also kind of an Uber publisher. So they publish games, but they also own other companies that also publish games. But by revenue, they make the most money of all game publishers. They're also a Chinese company, and so that has caused a lot of fretting as of late, given their potential to have a lot of influence over U.S. companies. But again, they appear to be very hands-off. They're more hands-off than a lot of American companies that acquire a lot of smaller companies. However, in this one instance, not necessarily in this one instance, China has a programmatic stance on video games, and over the last couple of years, they have become more sensitive to the notion that video games are addictive. They therefore require, in order to get basically their equivalent of ESRB approval in their country, for games to be instrumented in a certain way so that they can monitor playtime, so that they're aware of the ages of players and other matters of what this article calls surveillance. I feel like is telemetry, right? There are similar things in U.S. software, for various reasons. I mean, some of those are more clearly maybe opt-in, but most times that you're playing a video game, most times that distribution platform is aware of the specs of your PC. So it is not as if this is unfounded. One of the things that I thought was interesting, and I think this is the principal thing, is maybe the primary point is China as a China as a country and has a culture, has a different value system than Western countries do. However, a lot of the companies that are trying to get their games released in China are Western. A problem with games is that they are a creative endeavor, and they inherently have woven into them aspects of the ethos of their creators. And so, what is the moral obligation, if there is any, of those creators to oblige to China's requests and demands for this telemetry to be embedded in the software, or do they have a moral obligation to choose to not participate in that in order to more firmly align to Western values? Any opinions? I'll give the starter. Actually, DBQ, I'd like to hear from you, since you are kind of a Sherpa of content and its consumption by users.
Sure. Yeah, I guess that's my librarian cue for the week. It's interesting here because there is a number of facets here, and I like what you had brought up about how anytime that we log into something, chances are some of that is being tracked anyways. We've consented for it by scrolling down to the bottom, that there is, whether it's our PC specs being sent back to Steam and Valve, whether it's what you're logging in onto Android or iOS, or, it's also your browser ads that keep track of the last website that you bought something at and keep popping things up, right? I mean, there are a number of pieces here. I think the piece that raises some red flags for privacy advocates is an outside government requesting of a corporation or a private entity that they create some type of mechanism that allows the government to that information, right? I mean, I don't know, looking at the article, and I've read it, and what I can't tell is how this is any different than when I have to click yes, I'm over 18 to view the M-rated game on Steam, right? I mean, I could change my. Some days I'm born in 1957 on January 1st, and some days I'm born on 1981, depending on how far down I want to scroll, right? I mean, how much of that is self-reported, and how much of this is because you have to tie, and maybe because it is an online game and you have to tie it to a real life person, similar to what Blizzard has done with their real IDs and their real name pieces there, to prevent theft, that this is one way to provide that. So this is where I think it gets into that privacy piece, is that it does allow, they've built a system that would allow a government to have that data. And I think if they had just designed it themselves and were using it internally, let's say like Facebook or Google has done, that has gotten them into hot water, or at least raised some spikes of awareness here and there as they testified before Congress. I think that's where it comes within this context of Google, who did work with the Chinese government a little bit in trying to develop something similar, and then backed away from it. That so there are some pieces there. I have a hard time. I have a hard time getting too worked up or concerned about it, because to me, at the end of the day, it's an individual company that has decided to do this for the sake of their product, not necessarily because they're mandated and required by law to do it. That it is a choice, right? If they didn't do it, then they wouldn't be able to be in that market. So they've decided to, as a product, have a version of that provides that.
Yeah, so let me take some of the pressure off you and swerve it over to Prime. So Prime, the right to erasure, is a EU clause, a European Union clause, that replaces the right to be forgotten. So Article 17 provides that the data subject has the right to request erasure of personal data related to them on any one of a number of grounds within 30 days, including noncompliance with Article 61. That includes a case if the legitimate interests of the controller are overridden by the interests of fundamental rights and freedoms of the data subject, which require protection of personal data. This is a clause from the GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation, which recently went into effect in the EU. In certain cases, this can invoke a requirement by U.S. technology companies to implement specific things in software so that they are compliant with GDPR. No one batted an eye. There's a lot of wailing and gnashing of teeth and angst about, it's going to be more work, but nobody questioned our moral fiber and responsibility to remain true to an American ethos in the face of European regulation, particularly now in the days of the EU leveraging things like multi-million-dollar fines on Google and Facebook. How does this compare to a philosophical demand or question that American companies are connecting to the internet? Jesus frippin' A.
Quiet, Alexa.
How does this compare to the notion that it's a problem for us to respond in similar fashion to Chinese demands?
To me, it doesn't seem like it's that much different. And I don't know what the article's going for. Like, I don't know if they're trying to scare people, thinking that okay, so they're doing this in China. This is American. These are American companies. Obviously, their parent parent company or the headquarters or whatever, or like the controlling stake of the companies might be in China. They're putting these demands down on these companies and saying, hey, we got to do this. But it's just for China. It's not like are they afraid that they're going to start doing it in the U.S. or that's happening? Because even in the article that the guy mentions, I think it's from Riot Games, how they're talking, they do things with their games for the specific markets. So okay, that's fine, right. I suppose. I mean, that's
a China-specific version, and right. I like that you're going is it's a question of in this country, and rightly so, we have this fear of, as California goes, so goes the rest of the country. If California pops a regulation that forces compliance by any technology company, we know very well that that's going to impact the entire country. No tech company, no automobile maker, right? All the things that they have to do for California emissions. You can't buy a non-California emissions car because that wouldn't make sense for the manufacturing companies. They make all the cars for the California spec. I see. I like the logic and where you're heading with that.
And I was kind of waiting for that in the article, and I kind of read through it really quick, so maybe I missed it. But I never saw it. I never saw them like pose that fear that is this going to happen here? I never really saw that. They just keep talking about how China, China's surveillance state, how they keep adding stuff. You got like an ID number and all this other stuff that they're doing.
Hold on, Prime. Are you saying that a news outlet just reported the news and didn't provide you how to feel about it? That it just gave you the facts?
Yes.
Wow. Sorry, but I think to Gasicles' point, to me some of the difference is a cultural difference, right? Like there was the backlash over the European piece. There was a little bit of, this is going to cost more money, but overall, it fit within the Anglo-Saxon values of freedom, of personal liberty. It fit within all of those cultural norms that we associate. In some ways, while the structurally is not any different, right? As you're saying, Prime, this is just another government telling a company that if they want to do business in this country, they need to do X, Y, and Z. But because the norms differ from what we're culturally accustomed to, it becomes a little more of a news story potentially.
Yeah, and I guess that's my thing. It's like, okay, like they just put the facts out there. Okay, cool. But I guess the other thing in this article too that I got out of it is it just seems kind of just like super advanced parental controls, because they're just talking about people under 18 as far as I could tell from the article. That this is kind of impacting. They're watching not only their age, but they're actually watching their time spent in the games. And I think they even mentioned and I don't know if this is implemented or maybe they're thinking of this hey, people under this certain age can't play between 8 p.m. and 7 a.m. or something like that. Obviously overnight, because they don't want people doing a marathon and killing themselves, which has happened. I don't know if in China, but I know in Korea and stuff like that happens. But But yeah, you're right. I mean, they're just throwing the facts down. I didn't see why everybody's getting a big huff about it. It's I don't know. It was just kind of weird to me that, and I saw some comments and stuff about this is a big deal. I'm like, I'm not really. I guess. I mean, I suppose these people can throw code in there and kind of start slipping it into our games, but I'm pretty sure that'll get found out pretty quickly, and and I haven't seen anything like that come about, at least not that I have seen. So
it was a whole. I mean, you could even argue that the title was a little clickbaity, how they're putting surveillance tool. I'm like, it's not surveillance. Surveillance is when you are doing something and you are involuntarily being monitored. We should all know in this day and age in the 21st century that anytime you use any piece of software that's connected to the internet, somebody is monitoring that activity in some manner. So it's not like they came there with, it's not like, you booting up the game results in a drone flying and dropping in a secret camera in your home so you can be surveilled, right? So it's a little over the top. But my other big problem with this is, so even if I use the term, they're surveilling gamers. My problem is gamers repeatedly show behavior indicating that they need to be surveilled because they are endemically bad behaviors, as evidenced by players cheating in Apex Legends. Prime, can you talk to me about what is going on here and justify why China would be putting surveillance monitoring tools on bad behaving gamers?
I can, and I gotta skip over because I think you skipped a news section there. So hold on a second. Let me pull up that article. But yeah, so that's right. It was a good segue though. So yeah, so the one of the excuse me, on their Reddit subreddit, I guess, of Apex Legend, a development update was posted stating that if they catch you cheating, it says cheaters and spammers. I'm not really sure what the spammers is. I was going to look that up, and I forgot what that term actually means. But basically, if you caught cheating.
So I think the spammers is referring to the situation they just had in Rainbow Six Siege, where it's something like not cheating, but sometimes people will discover a bug where like spamming a certain key. I think in Siege they were like spamming like the semicolon button or something, while players were queuing up in the wait time before the game, and that would prevent defending players from being able to like that prep time that they get to put up defenses. So I think that's what spamming refers to, something like that.
Oh, okay. So they're going to group all those people together in their own games. So all those cheaters would just be with the other cheaters and spammers. They're not going to be put in the general populace, which DB did some research beforehand, and we found out that they did that in Titanfall also. I don't know if it was 1 or 2 or both. I don't know.
It was Titanfall 1. So back in 2014, that they came out with, a version of Fair Fight, which has been used by other things like Battlefield 4, and they were using it to not only identify cheaters, but then to match them up against each other as well.
Yeah.
So this is something that Respawn's had within their kind of portfolio or their repertoire going back 5 years.
Yeah, so obviously it's been there, and we were both thinking there was some other game that was doing that, but we couldn't find anything in our quick search before we started up. But I mean, I think that's fair. I don't see any problems with that. They also mentioned here in the article, they've banned over 355,000 cheaters, at least on the PC, just on the PC side, since March of this year. So they're trying to fight it, and take care of it. I mean, I think this is a pretty fair. I mean, you still get to play, but I mean, you're going to play with other cheaters. So I don't know. They don't mention this in the article, but I don't know if there's a way that you get out of those matchmaking brackets, or however they tally that and mark you as a cheater. I'm assuming if you just don't, it's PC, so maybe you got some kind of aimbot or something. If you don't use aimbot for a few games or something, you can get thrown back into the general populace. They don't mention that, but I'm assuming it's something like that. Good
Whenever
behavior.
you come up for parole, you have to go before the board and pass your hearing and show that you are generally redeemable as a contributing member of society, and then you can go back to the regular pool. I have zero sympathy for this, and I think it's excellent. As far as I'm concerned, they could all be shipped off to the island of Dr. Moreau to play by themselves. I'm fully on board with the notion of gated communities. I would even pay an additional fee. Like Apex Legends is free to play. Let me pay $5 or $10 a month or something, or even make it higher to screen out the griefers who would still jump above that bar, so that I can go play with people who actually have some ethics and morals and would like to be just good gamers. I would totally love, I've said it before on the podcast, I would totally be on board with a good gamer club, where, it's kind of like a country club of gaming, right? Where, people have to abide by a certain code, and if they're not, they're out. So, I don't know, Prime, different feelings?
I guess, but I guess the only problem I have with this is how are they actually determining? I guess like for spammers, that seems kind of logical. Like if you're hitting a button like 1,000 times beforehand, obviously that's you're doing something to try to jam up people. But I don't know. I think the cheaters part is always kind of a gray area for me, just because I mean, how do they actually? And this is another thing they don't really say on here is how are they actually determining what a cheater is? Like, say I'm like, I don't know, this is just on the PC side, but say, like I'm going around the world and all of a sudden I find a glitch by mistake, is that going to be, ban me right away, or do I got to do that, like 3 or 4 times or whatever they determine, what the cheater, is. So I guess that's the only problem I have sometimes. Otherwise, yeah, I'm all on board. Just put the cheaters together. I mean, if you're going to do that, just, throw them together, let them let them feel the pain. If this is like their first defense they've ever done this, they're gonna find out really quick, what a cheater really is when they get, on those people who really use aimbots and all this other crap that they use on PC that they can program into stuff.
What I love is I could just see like all the gamers like forming gangs in this place that is like not general population in the prison, right? That they clump together around like big defensive personalities or something, and it's hilarious. I love it. DBQ, any thoughts on this?
Well, I find it interesting that at the same week that this comes out, that Blizzard also, Jeff Kaplan over at Blizzard with Overwatch, they announced what they were going to do in terms of shutting down matches when cheating was detected and booting all the players. And that there's something, which is interesting because they say it won't affect players' ranking, but you're just going to get kicked out of your match. So, watching these two different systems play out in online competitive games to see how that actually affects the average player's experience. In some ways, I could see that the Apex Legend model of it is going to be less disruptive for the average player, for the law-abiding gamer, than somebody who has already waited to find a match-made game in Overwatch, and then 30 seconds in gets booted from the game because somebody's cheated, and then has to wait again for another game, right? I mean, in some ways, I can see where Blizzard wants to do that in order to protect rankings, but at the same time, I don't know that it's going to create a very positive gaming experience for someone. Where Titanfall, as you said, just by kind of cordoning off those that are cheating, it potentially protects, or ideally protects, the rest of us.
Eventually, we'll get to a point where we will ship all of these cheating gamers off onto Manhattan, and we will build a wall. And then Snake Plissken will have to go in to rescue the president.
Right, I was waiting. I couldn't tell if you were going the Warriors route or Escape from New York. So
to liberate the good guys who are wrongly accused.
Right.
Put on the
Right.
So I guess there's two things here I want to say real quick.
Yeah.
So on their Overwatch side, now you're saying that they're just going to kick everybody out of a match when something like that happens.
Yep, they're going to shut down. At least what they're saying right now is that their plan is to shut down the match, and then by doing that, they'll not have the cheater put back into the pool for the next loop of matchmaking. But it does sound like they're shutting down the match. That potentially the cheater, as they're identified, would be penalized for quitting the match, which would affect their rankings, while everybody else wouldn't have that kind of quit count negatively toward their rankings. Again, yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I was going to say I could see where they're going with that, but I could see also now if they can identify who the cheater is, why wouldn't they just kick him? And I could see where they're thinking is like, okay, here we're just going to dump everybody out. But if you're looking at it from the consumer point of view, like they're playing and all of a sudden just boom, they're gone. It's like, come on, man. And if that happens like multiple times, I mean, that's going to piss a lot of people off. I mean, if it happens a lot.
But I mean, if those matches are ranked, I guess the problem is that the presence of the cheater has tipped. I mean, it's a team-based game, right? So if the cheater's on your side and you're winning, then you're winning because that person was cheating.
I guess that's true.
And that's right. I think it has the distinction there is the ranked battles. So if you're playing just a pickup game, it's not going to be the same. But if you're playing a ranked battle, for people who are concerned about that, I think this probably is a good option, because rather than having it now be 5-on-4 and having the scales tipped against you because you're outnumbered, this is just, it's going to cycle you back through for the sake of ranking. And maybe, I think to my earlier kind of gripe about waiting to get match made back in, if you're concerned about ranking, you're probably okay with waiting for a fair match as well.
Okay. Yeah, I missed the ranking part. That's all. Okay, yeah, that makes sense then.
I mean, I think this is a thing that you do because the game's already out of the bag, right? If you put this on the front end, maybe what we'll wind up seeing it, hey, 10-point penalty, cheater X on team B, right? Using aimbot, right? And then maybe that team will get time to like get that person in check or kick or boot them themselves, right? So I don't know. Yeah,
Yeah, it makes sense for ranked matches, I guess, because now that I think about it, like when I'm playing Rocket League and they have ranked matches, casual and all that kind of stuff. If I'm playing Rocket League and one of my teammates just dumps out, either because we're losing or whatever, we might be just been losing by one, and people will just dump out, and it's only it's 2-on-3 or 3-on-4, whatever match I'm playing. I mean, now we're at a disadvantage. Now we're at a real disadvantage because we
right.
lost the first.
So having the cheater in the game, disadvantages the people who weren't the team who wasn't cheating. If you just boot him, then it disadvantages the team that he was on,
right?
He or she was on, even though they weren't cheating. So I guess my question is one place that we won't have this problem is on Stadia, right? Because Google knows how to surveil people. They clearly have monitoring tools in place to prevent all of this. And Ubisoft thinks that that's going to be a fine world to live in because it won't cost them that much to port their games to Stadia. I still have a kind of a question. From a software perspective, this shouldn't be a... I don't know.
Be a news story?
Well, I don't understand how... I'm still failing to understand how this is a port, because Stadia is just a cloud service that runs on PC. Maybe Stadia actually means Linux in its underpinnings, versus these games that are probably made to run on Windows. But at most, this should be enabling of certain hooks for the Stadia API. It shouldn't be an entire like porting is translating a game into a different set of programming languages, right? So if we say we released a game on PlayStation and we're going to port it to the Switch, maybe it's not a full-blown rewrite, but it's a super significant amount of work. So this, for some reason, continues to be a source of conversation. DB, did you want to cover this one, or do you want me to cover this one? And you get
I'm right there with you, right? The idea of, we don't talk about ports if something, Borderlands 3 is coming to the Epic Store. It's not going to be ported to Steam in 6 months from now, right? This is where reading through this. So this is, again, the news story here is about how Ubisoft does believe that bringing games to Stadia will be relatively cheap. It should be, right? As you're saying, it should be some type of PC underpinnings that it should be relatively easy to do, or at least cost effective to do, even if it is running some type of Linux under the hood there. The other piece of this that isn't in some of the articles I've read is, it should be relatively cheap because Ubisoft's been there from the alpha and the beta, right? Last year with having Assassin's Creed Odyssey on there, I'm assuming that if they're developing a PC game and whatever they have to do to bring it over to Stadia, they've figured that out at this point. And now it's a matter of running that additional extra step or churning it through that workflow in order to bring it over. So yes, this should be relatively easy for lots of people. But maybe because Stadia is a new platform, quote unquote, that it is something that Ubisoft feels like they want to be out there promoting, because with they're heavily invested in the success of Stadia, not just because they've been there from the beginning, but because they've got Ubisoft Play Plus or Uplay Plus coming this fall, but then launching on Stadia in 2020, which was announced at E3, right? So they're invested in that Stadia infrastructure because, as we've been reading about and hearing about, Stadia is not going to be like the Netflix of games. Stadia is going to be more, their AMA had it more along the lines of games for, games with gold, one game a month, something that may add up. But Ubisoft's Uplay Plus is that kind of EA Access, Microsoft Game Pass kind of subscription model. So they're hoping to be first on that Stadia platform. And so I can see where, from a PR piece, that their investment here is not only about making sure that other companies know that it's easy to do, but it also helps maybe ensure consumers who are out there thinking about whether they buy the Founders Edition that, well, if it's going to be easy for a major third-party company to do, it should be easy for any of my other favorite games as well.
And for a moment there, it sounded very much like you were about to say it's like Games for Windows Live. And I was going to say, no, please, no.
I'll stop myself. I caught myself.
Yeah, so the other interesting parts of this article is there's a lot about the recent earnings call with Ubisoft. Overall fiscal sales down 9.2% year on year, and just a regurgitation of the note that they reported earlier that the Division 2 so far is their best-selling game of the year, which is good to hear. I'm a big fan of that game. That's my number 2 grind game.
AC Odyssey has also helped and given them some strong sales. I think the other piece of that earnings call that I found interesting is that PC is now their most profitable platform as well, and their biggest seller.
Yeah, that's it's a big swerve, right? Because I was listening to episode 12, the most recently recorded episode of the VR Game Nights that Greylock 3491 and I do, and in that he was talking about last week. He was talking about how in console generation 7, the world became heavily PC oriented, right? It was all about the 360 and the PlayStation 3. Consoles became the lead platform for many development teams, and then things were ported to the PC. It seems like that script has very much flipped, at least at this point in this console generation. PC as a primary deployment target has been running at parity, I would say, with the consoles. And it's quite a pendulum swing to now see, Ubisoft reporting that, now that is where they make a lot of their money, and we're kind of getting back to like a PC first gaming mentality, kind of like we had in the very late 90s and early 2000s. Yeah, I mean, fripp. I messed that up. Turning of the Shrew was what I was trying to get around to. Did this article give either of you any greater confidence in Stadia as a platform or less confidence?
No, I mean, it didn't change my mind really either way. I wasn't even thinking about how, as you said, I guess, because in DB that, why is this going to be such a hard? Why would this be such a hard port? Since it's PC, it should be PC all base. There's not a console that you have to port to, and you either it's all on the back end. These are all on servers somewhere. That everything's running through. So I don't get it. The only thing is, once again, I get reminded of Ubisoft is we're gonna have a service on a service, basically. We're getting Uplay on top of Stadia, and that's what I'm seeing Stadia as right now, or how I see it is it's just a service. It's Xbox Live to me, Xbox Game Pass, so it kind of roll up into one. You're gonna just sign up for this, and then you still have to buy your games through it, basically. So I don't know. Like I said, no, it hasn't really changed anything for me.
So I think it is like Xbox Live, because it allows that online play, but I don't know that I would call it's Game Pass, right? I think that Google's been relatively clear over the last week and a half that it is not Game Pass, right? That they have come out and explicitly said this is not a buffet, right? That this is a platform where we're going to have to buy other games for.
It's a distribution platform, and I think that's a thing that, and I think this is what a lot of the journalists are getting wrong, is because they haven't gotten their minds wrapped around that concept. What we're having an outgrowth of distribution platforms. These are train tracks, shipping lanes. These are essentially oil pipelines that are run from home base to your home that deliver games. You can have an Exxon pipeline that comes through. You could have a BP pipeline that comes through, whatever, right? They're different distribution platforms. It's the same as a bunch of record company distributors who all pump records and CDs into a record store. The content owners, the printing houses, those are the guys who are Games with Gold and Uplay and whatever. These are the guys who are. Maybe a better analogy is these guys are essentially. I'll steer away from the Netflix thing. These guys are essentially kind of if they're content delivery people, then they're like your ISP, right? Lots of content can come through that pipe, right? But somebody owns that pipe. The difference is that this isn't monopoly, right? And you have options on whose pipe you want to have coming into your home. But
right, that Stadia becomes. Go ahead, finish your point.
But then the content owners are the ones who get to have like the pass deals, right? So you can have an ISP that can ship you stuff, but then you have to sign up with somebody to get that, to get what gets shipped to you specified.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I misspoke. I didn't mean to say Games Pass. I meant to say Xbox Live with Gold, because you get the free game every once in a while. Just like you're gonna in Stadia, they mentioned that every once in a while you'll get a free game. So,
and I think that I'm calling you out on it because it is Agassicles is right that it seems like in the media around the announcement of Stadia that there was this anticipation or this assumption that it would be like this, and Google was not clear about it until relatively recently in terms of what it would be like. And I like your distribution analogy there, Agassicles, because it is, to me, it feels similar to, let's say, iTunes circa 2010, right? It's a distribution method. You still need to buy the music you want to listen to, but you now have a platform to listen to it conveniently. That the idea behind Stadia, not so much the founders piece, but next year when you can play it on any device that runs Chrome, that becomes it's the barrier to entry that Stadia takes away, that you don't have to invest hundreds of dollars in a graphics card or a new platform. It becomes all I really need to do is buy the controller, or not even that. If I have an old controller, all I need to do is buy the game, because the barrier to entry, the system to play that on, has been flattened.
Yeah, and I was going to say, to me, it's maybe not quite iTunes, but Apple Music, right, or Spotify, right? I mean, it's
well, I don't know that it is though, because in Spotify you get all kinds of music for free. You just decide what you want to listen to. Here, other than the one game you may get, I'm not gonna,
That's okay. Yeah.
To me, it feels more like it is. I have to purchase that. I may get a couple free songs or a free CD once a week.
Right.
But
well, I guess what I was saying, it's a different intermix, right? I think the reason you can skew strongly against Netflix is because Netflix only provides you things through subscription. There's no way to buy anything on Netflix. So maybe a better way to think of it is it's almost kind of like Amazon Prime Video, right? There's stuff that you're going to get for free. You're going to get Stadia games, right, periodically for free. And then there's an access path for you to then buy other things.
I think that makes sense, right? Because that's a good analogy, because potentially with Stadia, you also are going to have that buy or rent option, the same you do with Amazon Prime. And we know that Stadia has individual houses, development houses that are working on unique games, which then become Stadia originals that may be for free as well.
So Stadia is going to launch, and Ubisoft's going to have 6 games there at launch, but it's going to take so long for more Ubisoft games to come to Stadia. To cop a line from Greg Miller, if I wanted to buy more Ubisoft games from the mom and pop shop right away at the very beginning, earlier this fall, how would I go about doing that, DBQ?
Well, you could pick up Uplay Plus, which is the Ubisoft subscription, the service, which is going to be for $15 per month. They haven't announced, or at least I'm not sure if they've provided a discount if you purchase a year worth, if there's anything there. But this is going to be on Uplay, so it'll be on PC. It is not slated to come to Stadia until 2020. So that is the caveat there, so that you may open up the Uplay back catalog significantly with over 100 games on your PC, but if you're thinking about connecting it to Stadia, you're going to have to wait to the later Stadia rollout after the Founders Edition.
Man, this evokes so many questions, because then my question becomes, if Stadia is different than PC, and I'm paying the $15 a month, and we know that you can't play across, does my $50 a month entitle me to 2 instances of that title, one on Stadia, one on PC? Or is it one or the other? Or do I have to have a Stadia Uplay account that I'm paying $15 a month for, and that delivers me games on Stadia? But if I want those games just unlocked on bare metal on PC, that's a different account.
So you're saying, like, if I wanted to play my EA Access games on Xbox, but then also on PlayStation, where I need to buy another EA Access account and subscription to play the same games.
Is that, I mean, that is how that's set up.
That is how EA Access works, right? And Uplay has not been, Ubisoft has not been out there to say, that they haven't said one way or the other that I've seen. And I've been listening to it since they announced it at E3. The messaging, the way they framed it at E3 and the discussions around E3 certainly made it sound like that they were tying it tightly with Stadia, which meant that they've said in Uplay, and Uplay is coming to Stadia in this, but they haven't said anything specific about whether or not you'll need 2 separate accounts.
Yeah, I just read it as you'd have. I mean, this is just me. This is a separate service on top of Stadia. So if Stadia has, well, obviously Stadia's going to have at least like the new, not Watch Dogs. Well, maybe Watch Dogs too. But what's the shooter one? Ghost Recon.
Ghost Recon Wildlands.
Yeah, I know they're going to have that because they had announced that. But I mean, I don't know. I always just read it as different services, so you'd have to have 2 different accounts, I'm assuming. But that's just me.
I think
there's no clarification.
If Ubisoft can come out and say this before it launches in September or shortly thereafter, I think it becomes a really big value add to people who are interested in it if it will carry over, right? If I can subscribe to it now, play these games, I won't have to buy. Again, the idea here is that if you purchase 2 to 3 Ubisoft games over the course of the year, you've kind of paid for this product, this service. And if I know in advance that it's going to carry over to Stadia, I'm a lot more willing to invest in Stadia knowing that. The same would be true if EA Access Premier on Origin said, yeah, if you have an Origin Access Premier account, when we launch on Stadia, it will count for that as well, right? Suddenly, Stadia becomes a whole lot more viable because these other parties, the third parties, are providing the back catalog that Stadia doesn't have. And I think for gamers, again, this is where who's Stadia for is a question that is out there. But for us, are you really going to rebuy something for the second or third time just so you can play it on Stadia? Or does a service like this provide you with a reason to go back and pick up, Assassin's Creed Odyssey or Origin or Ghost Recon because it's part of that subscription?
Yeah, lots of interesting questions, a lot of tough choices that are going to have to be made this fall. So, gentlemen, we have run the gamut of the agenda. We've left nothing on the floor. Is there anything remaining to be said? If there's
no, except what transitions tonight. Thank you. Excellent transitions.
So that's going to do it for us. We will be back next week for the GX show. One of the GX shows that I'm probably the most excited about. I will actually throw it out there. I foresee that this might run a wee bit long. If we need it to, we might have some topics to discuss that might need a little extra air to breathe. We'll see how that goes. Without further ado, then, on behalf of Osiris Prime, BBQ Hams, and the E2KG Network, my name has been Agasically Stamus from the Rounding Off Infinity Gaming channel on YouTube and from the Game Logic channel on Twitch. That's going to do it for us for tonight. Until next time, good night, good luck, and good gaming. We're out.